So I was going to ask you, when was the last time that you were out in LA or in the California area?
Oh man, they sent me to a military school. It's probably been over a decade now.
Oh wow.
I went to a senior leadership course. One of those things that's kind of required to get promoted to the next pay grade. I didn't get to venture out too much into town. I don't even remember the name of the camp I was at. It was a small one. It was specifically for training.
Sure.
I did get to go out one Saturday, and I met up with our cousin Ernie. He was in the same. He happened to live right outside, so he came and picked me up at the gate. I spent the night with him. Got to watch a football game. I got to watch the Raiders. Hung out with him.
Oh, that's right. You know what? I think I remember that because I think I met up with you, like in the middle of the night. We drove, but we were in San Francisco though. I think you were, because I was near Oakland, right? So
yeah.
I remember driving really late at night to go meet up with Ernie because we were staying in San Francisco and we had a rental, and we just happened to be like in San Francisco, and then I think you and I messaged each other, and then you said you were at Ernie's, and then I was like, oh. We should go there. We drove. I remember because it took about an hour to get there, and we drove all the way over there, and it was kind of like late at night. And I just remember because we were talking about The Walking Dead and stuff, because I was working on the Walking Dead video game.
That's right. Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. So, man, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, last time I was in LA specific, not San Francisco, because we were there in 2019 to go to the Halloween Horror Nights, and when we went, we were there for like basically just Halloween stuff. So we went to Halloween Horror Nights, we went to Not Scary Farm, we went to there was another like horror movie art exhibition or something. So our whole trip was to go see stuff like that and to eat. And we were eating a lot. But like the one thing about like LA food, or at least from what I remember, that's not really like, I guess it's more like Baja food. So maybe there's like, it's more like street tacos, but the little ones. Sure. They didn't really have beans. That was like not really a thing. I think it was more just like tacos and like a side or whatever. And even though they didn't have beans, our sponsor, or this long drawn out advertisement talking is for Podbean. So California may not have as many beans as you would think, but when it comes to podcasting, which is not related at all to California eatery, but yeah. So Podbean, we use Podbean. Podbean's great. Use it if you're doing podcasts. If you want to start a podcast or move your podcast service through them, you get all the goods. They have all the stuff that makes it super easy for you. If you use our promo podbean.com/topshelfvideo, you get 1 month free of their unlimited plan, which is what we use. Statistics, all that stuff, easy uploads to RSS feeds, easy fixing your RSS feeds when you mess up the audio like I do and I have to resend it out like quickly. All that stuff's taken care of. So yeah, I think it's like a pretty decent deal. So it's one of those things where it's use our code. It helps promote us, gives us a little bit of a discount on our service with them, but yeah, it's a good service. Go use it, and that's what we use. And I guess if you're ever out in LA,
try the tacos.
Yeah, try tacos. And I'm sure they have side of beans and whatnot, but yeah. So let's kick off this episode of Top Shelf Video.
All right, let's go.
All right. The shop is open for another episode of Top Shelf Video Podcast. My name is Eli. I'm one of the co-owners of the store.
And my name is Jaime. I'm the other owner and brother.
Yeah, and we're back. I was thinking about a lot of things. And I don't know. I was kind of in the mood. I think if you've listened to season 1, I think it's pretty easy to know what our tastes are in movies and help sort of shape, us as like young adults and then like growing up to who we are. And I would say, a lot of that tends to lean towards horror and action movies and ninja movies and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I don't ever want to. It's funny because I feel like in a similar way I had to sort of give this exposition when I was on with the guys on the Flickers from the Cave, because I had suggested such B-rated movies that I didn't want people to think like that's the only thing I know and that's all I know. Sure. I was like, no, I watch real movies, and I appreciate real movies. We watched some pretty legit stuff when we were growing up.
We did go to the blockbuster movies. It wasn't just we didn't only watch VHS movies from the corner store or the mom and pop. I mean, we did go to the movie theater for the new release. The Friday, big movie.
Yeah, and I think occasionally we'd work those into like some of our rentals and whatnot. Yeah. But I mean, obviously there's like a lot going on. On around us and sure. In the world and whatnot. And, we won't necessarily get into the politics of anything, but we will. At least I feel like, since this is a podcast about movies, but it's also a show where you and I are just being brothers and talking about things. I feel like my way of expressing certain things and wanting to, speak to like our backgrounds and whatnot. I thought we would pick a movie this week that I actually like. I think is a good movie, but B, I think when we talk about movies that have representation and people that look like us and things like that, like I very much remember Stand and Deliver from 1988, which is a movie we're going to talk about. I think for a lot of reasons, and we'll kind of get into it when we talk to this movie, but I don't remember if you remember this, and maybe I don't know, maybe it's maybe I dreamt it and it didn't really happen, but I remember going to see this movie at the theater because Dad's workplace, they were like, oh, hey, we're going to do this big thing for families. And we're like, you can bring your family to this early screening of this movie. And it was like, okay. And like, we're all like, yeah, we're going to turn down like free tickets to a movie. But we didn't realize it was like for a specific movie. It wasn't just like, oh, you get free tickets to go to movies. We went to go to watch a specific movie. And I remember going to the Morgan Twin, I think is that what it was called? You know what
the one that was over by Atlantis?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember what it was called, but I remember there was 2 movie theaters, the one we ultimately ended up working at the mall. And then the other one was across town because it was in that plaza where the Atlantis the arcade was Atlantis across the street from the McDonald's near the football stadium.
Right. Yeah. I think it was the Morgan Twin. And I want to say I remember that Dad was like, hey, we're going to go watch this movie because, it's a work thing or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah.
It was like what do they call it? Like a team building event or
probably
or a family thing, like all the families were invited.
Yeah. And Dad, back then Dad worked for the state as like
state hospital.
Yeah. I worked for a state hospital and he worked for within the technically, he was a state employee, right? So, like,
yeah. He was. I want to say, wasn't he one of the topper tiered guys of the maintenance department.
Yeah. Like, I think he was like basically like not, I guess like whatever a sub supervisor or
like a lead, or a shift manager maybe.
Or something like that. Yeah.
I know he was important enough to have the golf cart that he would go pick us up when we would have to walk across the fence.
Yeah,
and he'd meet us there, and then he'd take us to the lobby, and we'd sit there till he got off of work.
Yeah. So I very much remember. I remember going to this movie because I remember it was like in an evening. There was a bunch of people there, but they were all like his work people, and we all like sat together. And I kind of remember them being like, "Hey, you guys need to like, obviously be on your best behavior." But I think we had to kind of like not dress up, but I think they wanted us to be like, we're not going out like you guys go out on the weekend, because it was like a weeknight. And so I remember like Dad being like, you need to tuck in your shirt. You need to we were in
school clothes.
Yeah. Like he was putting us in school clothes instead of like our normal like t-shirts and like
t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah. Like we had to have the little button down shirt and all the stuff. And not that we had like school outfits. It was just the nicer clothes that they bought for us, that they wanted us to look good in our JCPenney's clothes.
Yeah. Our Sunday best.
Yeah. And so I remember watching this movie, and I remember thinking like, wow, like, I mean, because I must have been like maybe like 7 or 8 when this movie came out, or somewhere around there. Right. Like, but I remember that experience because like I remember leaving that theater going like, wow, that was kind of cool. Like I didn't think I thought I was gonna be bored and just hate this, and then like kind of was, kind of caught up
about school.
Caught up about a movie about school, and I felt like I was like I had been tricked or fooled to be like, wait a minute. Like now I'm going to go to school tomorrow and be like, school's cool. And maybe that was like the intention, but I just remember that because I remember it was very rare that we all went to the movies together, like mom, dad, and the three of us, because, mom or dad was always working, or, as soon as we turned, 15, we were working, and, we were just all like, we were your classic Hispanic middle, like, barely middle class, like hovering, kind of family. So like doing an outing like that was super, super rare, but which is why I think I remember it so clearly. Right. Yeah. And I remember like somebody talking either before or after the movie about like, this movie is very important, to the Hispanic community and things like that. And there was like a big speech, and I just kind of remember like thinking like, wow, this seems like really important. So I guess I should like pay attention.
Right.
And then, like I said, the movie was good. And then I was like, oh, wow, like, this is really cool. And then as I got older, I remember watching it and still remembering like, man, this is actually a good movie. I don't know. Do you remember that experience, or am I just like...
I don't think I can validate the memory of like what was happening. Mm-hmm. But I do remember an event where it was like, again, the same kind of feeling. It was like there was somebody talking, and we up to that point we hadn't really been like in a meeting or a briefing or any kind of function where there's a master of ceremonies talking, and like a presentation type of thing. Mm-hmm. We were just like, we're used to just the
here's the thing,
the tape, like the teacher in a teacher setting, but this was like in a meeting, and we were like, what do we like? Okay,
what do we do?
I guess, what are we supposed to be doing? I think we were a memory of feeling like you said, this is something important, but didn't really know what, because we were maybe still a little too young.
Yeah.
But because of the setting, we were kind of like, oh, this isn't like a popcorn movie only. Like there's something, people are talking, and that's not normal.
Yeah, and it's mostly dialogue throughout this whole movie.
Yeah. Sure.
There are a few slightly action sequences, but if anything, there really wasn't that. So it was really more about like the personal stories. But so 1988's Stand and Deliver, directed by Raymond Menendez, is the director. I don't think he did a whole lot. This is definitely like his probably his apex of things that he was involved with. And obviously it stars Edward James Olmos and Lou Diamond Phillips. And Edward James Olmos was nominated for Best Leading Actor that particular year. He didn't win, but it definitely kind of shows up in this movie. So, yeah, I mean, I think the main pretty simple premise of this movie is just IMDb has it listed as the story of Jaime Escalante, a high school teacher who successfully inspired his dropout-prone students to learn calculus. Which, yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of hits it on the head. Yeah. But I think I would say probably for people like you and I, and maybe this is why I particularly like this movie. I think this movie is really about, I mean, clearly it's about math, calculus specifically, and these kids that, you know, do the unthinkable in a time and in a place where people were like, that's, you know, could never happen. But I think if anything more than anything else, I think it shows a lot about the Hispanic culture. And I think it also shows a lot about like what it means to be a leader, what it means to be like somebody who like really cares about teaching, not just the word teaching, but I think like giving to others, right? You know, like everything that you would hope you would want out of everybody in the world, to want to give your knowledge when you have it, give your time when it's available, care about others, and also, but also like do it in a way that is like proud of your heritage and your background. Like,
right.
This movie like encompasses so much of that I think that's what like resonates with me. You know, my Spanish is terrible. I mean, I think we all, or at least, you know, not everybody might know that my Spanish is terrible, partly because of how we grew up. You know, and your Spanish is much better than mine. But I think like that all aside, like it's one of those things where it's like, that doesn't mean I'm not necessarily proud about like being a Hispanic or heritage, but like I'm very proud to be a Hispanic person and doing the things we do and making it from an area, you know, that is challenged, you know, maybe not as challenging as it is in this movie, but I think those are like some of the things that really, really resonate with me with this movie. Right. When I finished watching it today, I was just like, oh yeah, that's right. Like a real sense of pride, even though like I didn't take that math test. I don't think I could.
Oh yeah, no.
I could not take this. I was not great in math, but I wasn't terrible either. I was just like middle of the road. And I think that's just partly because I was kind of lazy and was like, what is the minimum I need to do to get by? That has more to say about me than it does about like my ability to do math. It's more about how I apply myself.
Sure. Yeah.
But
yeah. Same here.
Yeah. So yeah. I guess we can just kind of jump into it, because I think the movie itself, I think is pretty straightforward, but there are a couple like spots in here that I wanted to talk about. And I think also it'll probably, I think you and I were talking before we started recording about how I think this resonated with us and some of the teachers that we had growing up.
Sure.
You know, down on the border. But so yeah, I think so the movie starts off with we meet or we see basically East LA, which is where this movie takes place, and we see our main person in this.
Oh, you can call him a hero.
Yeah, that's true. You can call our.
He's the hero of the movie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can call our Hispanic Captain America or Captain East LA, because he really like demands that kind of level of superheroism. But Jaime Escalante starts the movie with him sort of. He is just cruising, going into work on his first day of work, and you see basically East LA, which, and I think when we went when we were little, and even when I've gone recently, like I haven't spent much time in East LA. It's mostly like, you know, in some of the more, you know, Universal Studio areas or whatever, you know, this is the area
the touristy area.
Yeah, touristy area, or it's somewhere that I know there's somewhere where I want to go. And, so I haven't really spent much time in East LA, but you get a real sense of like, what the area looks like. And I always felt, I remember when we watched this movie, I was like, wow, that actually looks a lot like where we are, but as a young person, right? And we hadn't traveled, and my only understanding of like New York and LA and all these places was through movies. And so seeing this was like, wait, that doesn't look like Die Hard. Like that doesn't like where is this, right? And I guess as a young person, you start to like. It takes a minute for you to go like, oh, I guess there are other people that look like me, or other places that look like the places where I grew up. It's not just the few iconic places that you resonate with, like a state, right? Like, like, you know, Texas, they show like the Cowboy football stadium back then, or cattle like running or whatever. And you're like, I don't see any of that. Like, you know, we didn't have any of that.
No. Yeah. We associate, like, when you think of California in our little, like you said, in the world we're creating in our minds as children, we think of like the Hollywood Hill where it says Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, and or like maybe stars, like Rodeo Drive, like the down, you know, like the movie, like, you know, outside of the movie set, the movie studios, you know, kind of where everything's clean and everything looks rich and everything looks fancy. There's a whole nother side of California that is not, that they don't.
It's the working class, right?
You know,
it's It's everybody else, and I think when I started watching this movie and they show Jaime going into work, and then there's like all this graffiti and all this stuff, which is really cool because you're getting a sense of
it's real, and
you get the sense of the culture. And I think in the very beginning, it's really cool. He's driving by and there's a big mural that has like a farm worker on the side of a wall, and it says like I think it says that we are not a minority, which you know, and I was like, oh, it's really cool, you know, just because, you know, that was like the Hispanic area, right, in East LA. So like, seeing that and seeing like, you know, some of the stuff that he's like that he's passing by, you're seeing like the day workers and the people, like, you know, you see the what do you call them? Oh man, it's slipping my mind. But the musicians, the
mariachis.
The mariachis, yeah, that's it. The mariachis are like walking, you know, like, and they look like they're just kind of finishing their night, and they're kind of like walking because you see them walking crossing the street or whatever, and like you see everybody like on their way to school and stuff like that. So like, it's a really cool intro because I feel like. It also, like I said, it reminded me of all those things of just like, oh wow, like this is very relatable. And then he gets to the school, and
it's building the world around the school.
Yeah, but you're getting a sense of what East LA is really like, because I'm sure we had only known of East LA due to like whatever we heard.
Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, exactly, Cheech and Chong, or some of the other stuff we'd seen in the news, like, oh, you know, there's a big, you know, there was a big fiasco in East LA or whatever, right?
Bloods and Crips and
all
the negative shit,
right? Exactly,
about that area.
Yeah, and so like the movie starts actually with Jaime Escalante shows up, I guess, for his first day at work, and he's got his briefcase, and there's a cop like in the office building because it looks like there was a break-in, and somebody like graffitied up all the inside and stole stuff and threw stuff around, and like and so I assume it's like the first day of school, maybe, or it's right around that early part of school. And so he gets there, and then it's kind of funny because I think in a very classic what schools were dealing with back then, he's like, you know, hey, here's my paperwork. My name's Jaime Escalante. I'm here to teach computer science. And they were like, oh, the computers haven't come in yet, you know?
Yeah.
And he's
we
like,
don't have them again.
Yeah. And he was like, wait, what? And then he's like, but I'm supposed to teach computers. And then they were like, oh yeah, you're going to be teaching remedial math. It's
we didn't get them last year. We didn't get them this year. We probably won't get them next year. So you can't teach computers.
Yeah. And so it's very much a hodgepodge school of like, well, if you're here, you're going to teach whatever we need taught. And so we've already got you under like whatever, you know, contract or whatever. So you're teaching remedial math. And so like, and it's funny you say Cheech and Chong, because like he comes into the classroom, the very beginning, the class is like overfilled. There's not enough seats for everybody. And everybody, you know, there's already graffiti on the wall. Like everyone's either got their feet up, or they're all talking, or, you know, they're all turning in different directions, and they're all like kind of just yelling things out at the back of the room. And it immediately made me think of those Cheech and Chong records that we used to listen to back in the day, you know, where it was like Sister Mary Elephant,
something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Sister Mary Margaret, or Sister Mary
Maybe
something.
It was Elephant, and she screams,
and she would scream. Yeah. And it was always because like you'd hear everybody in the background like, hey, let's light up a joint.
Yeah. It just sounds like a chaotic classroom.
Yeah, and she's trying to.
Dude, I forgot about those, man. Those were like vinyl records.
Yeah. The comedy
I
records.
forgot about those. Yeah. The comedy records, man.
It's like our version of YouTube was like listening to Cheech and Chong records, and I always remember that one because like, I mean, as much as I, we're well, I know your children listen, but hey, look, we weren't all angels, and
well, they're not kids anymore. So we're good.
Well, and they got their own kids that they're gonna have to deal with. So good luck to you.
Right.
But so I listened to some of those, and I remember being like in classrooms like that where it's like we were all being, a little bit of a nuisance here and there, and you'd see a paper come flying from the back of the room, and there's just a lot of like kind of chaos going on, and that's kind of how this movie starts, where he walks in, and I think he gets a real sense of like, oh shit, these kids are going to be a handful because they just don't seem like they don't want to be here, and clearly, there's more of them than me, so like they're probably going to overrun me, sort of situation, but. Yeah. I always thought it was kind of funny. One of the details that I kind of picked up on this viewing that I kind of missed out on was like, so he walks in and everybody's in there and you get a real sense of, like, oh, here's the, I guess what we would call like a vato. And then here's like here's like the punk rocker. Here's the, different types of characters. Yeah. And then, he quickly picks up on the fact that he sees some of the guys in the back, and he asks, is there anybody here who doesn't speak English?
Yeah. Raise your hand if you don't speak English.
Yeah. And he brings all those people up to the front because he's like, well, I'm gonna have to like do like a dual language class here, and then there's a kid up in the front. The of course like the kind of nerdy first one to the classroom. Yeah, sitting up front. And it's funny because I never picked up this until this viewing, but he's reading the book Dune.
Was he? I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, like he's got like the paperback, and I was like, oh wow, like talk about a way to like really insinuate like he is a nerd. He's reading like one of the thickest like copies of Dune that you can have, and I was like, oh shit, like that's how you classify a nerd back then, like it's pretty cool. I mean, he had the glasses.
Perfect prop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he had the glasses, but at the same time I was like, okay, no, he's got the book. And so yeah, he's trying to get control of the class, and you get a real sense of just like what he's up against and the situation of that school. So they really set the tone of just like, wow, this is just a very underprivileged school, but also like these kids don't want to learn. These kids aren't really here to learn. They're just here to be in school and do their thing and then get out. And then we quickly, like shortly after that, he goes home and he's taking care of the trash and he's talking to the neighbor, and the neighbor is like, hey, how are things down at whatever computer company that you're working for, because I heard about this or that or whatever. And he was like, oh yeah, no, I don't work there anymore. And he's like, oh man, he's like, well, if you need any like references, I can maybe work something out for you, whatever. Yeah, he's like, we could use somebody like you or whatever. And then he's like, no, I gave up that job. And his wife is quick to be like, yeah, he decided to be a math teacher or a computer science teacher. And she clearly seems pretty disappointed in the whole, like, what are you doing? Like, you're taking less money to do this.
You can tell she doesn't agree with the decision maybe.
Yeah. And they definitely,
she's supportive throughout the movie, but you can tell from the onset that she's
wondering like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And it's also clear in what they show there, they are not living in East LA. Like they live like probably in a nicer part of LA because the house is much nicer and the neighborhood looks, just looks nicer. I mean, and to be honest, like the neighbor
was white,
is a white dude with a boat.
You don't see that in East LA.
Yeah, he's talking about like, oh, you got to come out on the boat with me, and everything looks really nice. So I think it's clear that she's just kind of like, I don't know what you're doing, but we're like, it just, and especially back then, when we were growing up, and I remember mom and dad and everybody else around us, right? Like making sure that you have money in the 80s during like a post-Reagan, Bush era, like middle class didn't have it super well. So like we were barely making it. So I can only imagine a teacher back then. I mean, hell, even a teacher nowadays, it would be very tough. And so like you get a real sense of like, okay, well, I wonder what his purpose is, or what, I wouldn't say purpose, but I wonder what his motives are here, right? Of like, yeah, why did he give up a computer job and then he's going to be a teacher? And then,
in arguably the worst area of Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like being the cop of like, why did you want to get, transferred down here, where all the crime is the highest, don't you want to be in Beverly Hills? And then, it's like, well, I want to make a difference, like, or whatever. And you don't get that right away, but then like you kind of do, because then like sort of the next couple scenes that kind of happen after this is like the class is still very rowdy, but now you're getting a sense of like what and how Jaime Escalante like to reach out to these kids.
Yeah, kind of slowly starts to win them over.
Right, because
they're paying attention.
Right, because he's trying to make things very relatable to them.
Yeah.
And he slowly starts introducing this idea of like, like doing something for yourselves, like in a way that is more practical, right? And he's saying like, you don't want to be the guy who runs a fryer. You want to like, you want to be something more than that. We
that's right. Yeah,
we as Hispanics can provide more than that. We don't need to just be flipping burgers and pumping gas, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like the next day he comes in and immediately he gets like the attention of the students because he's wearing what appears to be like a fast food outfit. Like he's got the
he's got the
paper hat,
and an apron.
And an apron. He's got a butcher's knife.
Yeah, he pulls out the cleaver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With the apples. Yeah, that's right.
And so he starts like slowly introducing to the kids, like, I guess a way to connect with them, because it is remedial math, but I think he's like making it very, very practical, right? And then what I really like about that is like, it obviously it is very practical, and he starts using his, like, I think clearly, and I want to say Jaime Escalante may have already passed away, I believe. The real person, maybe in the past, like, 10 years, whatever. But what I really liked and appreciated about that was like, as he's like playing this out early on, he starts talking about stuff, where he's like, I'm gonna teach you guys, about certain things or whatever, and then he starts like, again, starts reflecting more into the culture of like you guys are more than just remedial math people. Like, you can be whatever it is you want to be, and it's a very cliche sort of thing, but in the way that he's saying it, that relates directly to them, I think like has like a big impact. And I feel like early on, like he starts running into the different types of people that are at student, right? Like clearly you have the nerd, and then there's another girl in there who also has glasses and is very well spoken and kind of nerdy. And then there's like the next tier down where it's kind of the ones you're gonna have to try a little bit harder, which is like the muscle heads or the gear heads. There's like a guy who likes working on the cars, and he's like the punk rocker guy who likes hanging out with the girls.
He's just hanging. Yeah, he's just doing the girl thing and the girlfriends.
Yeah, and then you eventually have the cholo, or the
the gangster.
The gangster. I wouldn't even say cholo. It was really more because cholos tend to not really be gangsters, but then there were basically I think that guy was like a gangbanger, even though they would kind of dress the style of maybe like a cholo, with the glasses and the button-up shirt, the headgear,
the headband, with the button on the top and kind of just open to the bottom, the khakis. Yeah.
And so like I think he's quickly like reading the room and reading the vibe of everything of like, oh, I'm gonna have to like bring a little bit of something to everybody in their own different way, right? Because he quickly is getting like confronted by like the gangbanger, and everybody in the room's kind of like, oh shit, like so and so's here, and he's going to cause trouble. But then he's quickly to kind of diffuse that, because it's like he uses and I kind of, it was a little strange, but at the same time, it's like, it's more like a tough love kind of thing where like he almost used like shaming them in front of everybody else as a way to get them to not be like, hey, you don't want to be like the dummy out of all the people here.
Yep.
And
oh, you're the tough guy.
Yeah. Oh,
you're the tough guy in my class. Look at the tough guy. You know? I mean, he kind of challenged him to the point where it was like they were getting embarrassed.
Yeah.
And he was standing up to them. I mean, because those were the guys who were like, you know, hey man, you're not gonna give me no problems. You know, I kind of insinuating he runs the show.
Right.
And he quickly put him in his place.
Right.
Because he was probably one of the first teachers that didn't back down to him. Right.
And probably because if I remember correctly, I think like early on at some point he talks about he's from Colombia. Or Venezuela?
No, Bolivia.
Bolivia, that's right. Because I remember somebody saying like, oh, he probably has seen worse than like a couple of gangbangers. Because they're like, oh, he's probably seen some tough shit, you know, with like the stuff that goes on down there. And so like, yeah, it's really interesting because he like you said, he quickly diffuses that. But you get a real sense of this person and this character because like shortly thereafter, like we see like a fight, like I guess after class, he's like walking through the school with like, I think like, which again, you get another sense of just like what the school is all about. Cause he's walking with the phys ed teacher, who's teaching math also. Cause he's like telling him like, man, I'm having a hard time, like, having to work through these tests and stuff. And he's like, oh man, hey, if you need any help, like, let me know. I'll give you a hand if you need it.
But he was basically like another Mr. Shoop.
Yeah,
because he was like, I'm a gym teacher. They got me in math.
Yeah,
and he's like, I don't do that.
I don't do math. Like, and so he's talking to him, and then there's like a fight, and again, like you're getting a sense of the school of just like there's just constant mayhem and there's constant like
it's
struggle. Yeah, at the school, and it did remind me a lot, like in a very strange way, but I mean it's kind of the truth, right? Is like when I went to high school in ninth and 10th grade were separated from 11th and 12th grade. Yeah. I don't know if you remember that. And then eventually it was all in one school, but so I spent my first 2 years at the separate school.
Alamo campus.
Yeah, which was like walking distance to our house. And it was, I think you get a real sense of like schooling in the early 90s, because that would have been what, like 1990? 1991?
90 and 91 would have been those 2 years for you, because I graduated 92, so you were
that's right.
behind me.
Yeah, so I remember going to that school, and it was like there were always gang fights. There were always like there was always stuff kind of going on because, I mean, honestly, the school was overpopulated, you know, and I feel like that's what you saw in this movie was too many students in a classroom that we could all barely fit. There's more of us that would overrun the teachers. There were always fights like in the cafeteria. There were fights in the hallway. I remember one year somebody threw like one of those chemical smoke grenades, like a military style smoke grenade, like in the hallway, because remember that was like a closed in building. There was no was no outside, so like
it wasn't like the other campus. The other campus was more like a
traditional.
The traditional, like the doors opened out to the outside, the foyer or whatever,
and you could cut across the yard. Ours was kind of like a prison. I mean, I hate to say it, but it really was like it was all closed in. All the doors were all right next to each other, and so like they would open and you just kind of get flooded into the hallways. And so I always remember that because some guy threw like, and he was like a gangbanger, but he threw like one of those, like I'm pretty sure it was like what is that, like phosphorus, or what is that?
Like the grenades that we use like for
signaling a helicopter or something.
Signaling, right? It wasn't anything like
wasn't dangerous.
It wasn't like a chemical for like to stun. It was more like a
signal.
It was really just a smoke grenade for signaling.
Right. And it was so like strong that I remember it filling up. Like we had to evacuate the school. Everybody had to get out, you know, because obviously nobody knew what the hell was going on. But in any case, it reminded me of this because I was just like, I remember, like, I mean, after 9th grade, like when you go into 10th grade, but every year you get a class of freshmen, And then that's usually when kids drop out of school, right? Is like 9th, 10th grade, because it's almost like they were like using that school to like filter us out before we went to junior high or our junior and senior years. Cause then like, oh, well, if you made it this far, you're probably going to graduate and, you know, you may go to college or whatever. And so it almost felt like they were using that as a way to filter us out, which always felt weird. But it reminded me a lot of like the kind of madness you saw in this school of like, there's like fights, they're throwing trash. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of crazy, you know, when you think about it, but
Yeah.
again, very relatable to me in this movie. And so like, you see him like, you know, not only like teaching, but also trying to engage with the students to make sure like they're not getting into fights or they're like safe or, you know, stuff like that. So it was really interesting, but like you were saying, using that sort of, almost like trying to shame them, you know, and then I think that's where you kind of get to a little bit of a tipping point, because there's another scene where he's teaching. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to teach you guys like remedial math, because like remedial math is for like what does he say? It's for burros or like mules, donkeys. And he's like, I'm going to teach you guys algebra 2 or something, I think is what he says. And so everybody's like, wait, what? Like, no, I don't want to do that, you know. But he's like, you can do better than remedial math, and I'm going to teach it to you. And I think that's like a tipping point for the movie almost pretty early on, because he's able to connect with one of the chulos, or gangbangers, I guess, is Lou Diamond Phillips' character.
Yeah, Angel.
Yeah, Angel, because he's trying to teach him in a very practical way, and he gets the answer right, which is like what's -2 plus +2, you know, and he's like, oh, it's 0, you know, and he gets it.
Whole.
Because he's
like, you know,
he's giving him a very practical example, which again, I wish that like not to say, you know, I had terrible teachers, but you know, teaching's hard, you know. It takes a lot to put together like a lesson plan and all that stuff. Cause I mean, I've done it, and you don't know what's going to work and what's going to resonate. But yeah, when he's talking about like taking, you know, making a hole in the sand, and the sand in itself, you know, is the positive and the hole is the negative. And he's like, so if you fill the hole, what is it? And he's like, it's 0. And again, I think that's really cool, because then he quickly starts giving him the history lesson of like, did you know that he was like, it was the Mayans who were the first to develop in the use of 0, like that 0 is
like, that's your ancestors. You know,
it's in your blood. Like math is something that is part of your heritage. And I was like, oh man, like again, as a little young person watching this, I was like, wait, is that true? Like, and, you know, and sort of kind of going through that. But like, even now, you know, and anybody who works with coders or people that do stuff like I do, or in that world, right, which is like 0 is an integer, like 0 is a value. And then like artist people are like, no, 0 is like not a thing. It's like, no, it is a value, because you can have a positive and a negative, and it can equal to the baseline, which is 0. So like during that whole scene, and I was just like, oh wow, that's like really cool. And so, I think that's sort of like a turning point of like, he's kind of captured the students enough to be like, okay, sure, we'll buy into this algebra, you know, nonsense that you're talking about. But then quickly thereafter, you get a sense that at a school board meeting or a meeting amongst all the some of the staff or whatever, they're talking about the school's like accreditation, and that they are probably going to get like, if they get knocked out of accreditation, like I guess they'll basically shut the school down.
I would imagine, because if you're not accredited, then you
can't. They won't allow you to teach.
Like because you're not doing good enough to even be teaching. They're not learning. You know, there's a test that shows that nobody's learning anything, so just shut it down. You know?
So like people would be out of jobs and all that jazz. So like they quickly like kind of talk about how like, well, it's a really interesting point, because like the woman who's the I guess she's the head of the math department is basically saying that like, we're in a no-win situation, because the economics of this area and the types of students that we're getting, we're like basically just statistically, we just don't stand a chance, because these kids are more likely to drop out of school or get involved with a gang or become pregnant or God knows what than they are to graduate. And she's like, we need more money because we're not getting it. Students aren't showing up. And so they're talking about how like it's a real problem. And they're like, we just don't have enough staff to do what we need to do. And Jaime Escalante is quick to be like, I can teach more. Like, I'll teach, I think he says, like, I can teach after school or, I think he also explains that he's like, we need to set higher expectations for the children.
Yeah.
For them to have a target to hit.
Yeah. Yeah, because she was already kind of being like, we shouldn't bother because we're not going to, these kids cannot do it.
Right. Yeah.
Without any kind of, like you said, like, he's saying I could do more because he sees the potential just in his classroom.
Right.
But the expectations, because of the area that they're in and the color that they are,
right?
It's like the expectations are so low. They're like, no, they're going to drop out. They'll end up pregnant. They'll end up in the gangs, and we're just wasting our time here. We're spinning our wheels.
It's statistically impossible, is what she's basically trying to say.
Yeah, and it sucks because as an administrator, as an educator, she's already got this defeatist mentality, which is. Yes, it's by far one of the most difficult jobs, but there's always has to be that hope or that like the will to keep trying,
right? Because
you got to get them at that age when it like that's the defining years of anybody,
right? Well, and it's
but she's already like then they're not gonna we can't do this.
Yeah,
they're not gonna bother.
Yeah, it really is about like the perseverance and like the desire to do that. But I think what I love about that particular scene or just that this whole sequence that happens around here is like, because I feel like this is very important even for like all of us nowadays, right? Is like, what is the expectation, right? It's like, we just want you to be good people, right? And here he's like, I want you to be this level, competent, smart enough. Like, I don't want you, and he says it a couple times throughout the movie, I don't want you to basically do something that is beneath you in the sense of like, you have more ability than this. And so go apply it, in more because, and he mentions it, he's like, you've already got like two things against you already, right? It's like the color of your skin and your surname, right? Those two things are already against you. So the only thing that you have to balance, or put into the balance is like being smart, and applying yourself when it comes to things like math in particular.
Yeah.
And then you see that right after because Angel, who kind of hits him up in the hallway, he's like, hey, Chemo, I guess, because they start calling him.
Kimosabe. Yeah, they're starting calling him. Yeah.
Because he says like, this is like my domain. This is, I run this kind of like a gang, sort of thing. But Angel is quick to tell him like, hey, I need your help. And he's like, well, you just come to class. He's like, no. He's like, I need your help because I can't have the other guys see me being smart.
Yeah. I got a reputation, man.
Yeah. And
he's got to be a vato. So
yeah. So he's like, I need some extra books so I can keep one at home and I can keep one in the classroom. He's like, I'll do you better. He's like, I'll give you 3 so that you can keep one in your locker, one for the classroom, and then one for home. So that way you never have to, do that. And he was like, so what do I get in return? And he's like, oh, I offer protection, so like, basically I'll keep the gang dudes off your back, if you do this for me. And then, so he's like, again, with Jaime Escalante, I think he was just not afraid of these guys or these gang guys that also, he takes that. He's like, yeah, it's fine. Almost in a way to kind of be like, yeah, it's hilarious. Like, sure thing, guy. But yeah, so I think like from that point, like the movie kind of like we were saying earlier, I think before we started recording, like the movie is I think what you would have effectively call a chamber piece movie, which is like, it really only takes place in like one place, which is kind of the classroom. And there are a few, there are scenes in other parts of the movie, but for the most part,
they're very minor.
Yeah, it is, because it's only giving you a sense of like, when we're not in the classroom, we see how these kids live outside, which is like, there's the one student who she's making sandwiches and making a dinner for her dad.
Yeah,
so that,
Lupe.
That's right, Lupe. Because
she's basically the oldest child. She's
she's
taking care of her siblings.
Yeah.
Because mom's working late. Dad has the night shift working wherever he's
Right.
going to work.
So it's
and she's essentially
always
the mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like the other mom.
Yep. So she is, and she's got a lot of kids, which, again, not uncommon for Hispanics, right? To have like a household of what I think there were maybe 2, 4, 5. I think there were maybe like with her included, it maybe was like 6. And so with the parents, it would be like 8. But yeah, so they, she's taking care of them. She's making the meals. Angel's taking care of his grandma because it seems like he lives with his abuelita or his, his grandma. We see, who else do we see? We see a couple of the students, right? Just
the dude that's working in the shop, the mechanic.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he works with his uncle.
He goes by Pancho.
Yeah, that's right. And so we just get a sense of like basically Hispanic culture, because I think another thing that resonates kind of like that is like family is very important, right, with like Hispanic people.
For sure.
And this sort of builds up to the point where like in a scene thereafter, like, they're back in the classroom and Angel's late, and he's like, hey, why don't you go see go see if you can get a spot in the shop class, because we're gonna need people like you to make trash cans and stuff like that or whatever. And he's like no, I really want to be here. But then like one of the young smart girls talks about
Anna.
She talks about how
she's the quiet one.
Yeah. She's dropping out of school, and she's like, this is like my last day at school or whatever. And he, he's kind of like, that's strange because she has so much potential. And then in the next scene, we see that him
and his wife are at dinner.
Yeah, at a Mexican restaurant, and the owner is kind of like, hey, did you all enjoy your meal? And hope it was good. And he was in a very like what our dad would do is like, oh, hey, this receipt, the math on this receipt is bad because it's all handwritten.
Yeah.
And it's all a ploy basically just to introduce himself to the manager, because Anna works at this restaurant, and the dad is explaining how he owns the restaurant, the wife works at the restaurant, the kids work at the restaurant, like it's a family business. And so she's going to drop out of school because she's going to eventually have her place, which will be running this restaurant. And so he's basically told her that she's dropping out of school, which seems extreme, but I mean, it really wasn't. Like, it seems that way, but
I think it was more common back then.
It was. Well, I don't know if you remember, because I remember at Ben Milan, we had friends who would like, I know they didn't drop out of school, but they would like leave before school was over because they would go up to the Northeast to go work with their families.
To go work in the fields.
With their families, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember like, oh, hey, why did so-and-so leave? And they were like, oh, like he got an exception.
Yeah, his family left, yeah.
They get an exception. It's like he still gets school credit. I don't know how they arrange, like maybe they made sure that like his grades or his exams or whatever were in order so that he was able to pass on to the next grade, But I remember that, and I remember being like, oh man, like, some of our friends would just be gone for the entire summer. And I'm like, well, where'd they go? And then to find out, like, they're migrant workers that would go work up in the Northeast, and so it's not uncommon, and I think anybody who's watching this movie now, like even back then, and I don't know, maybe even today, like it, it's not, it wouldn't be far-fetched for a family, especially a Hispanic family, to be like, no, this family-run business, it's always been, and that's how it's going to be, and you don't need an education. I didn't get an education, so so we do, and we're proud of it, and I think sometimes Hispanic pride can get ahead of get in the way of maybe
it's the best thing, and it can be the worst thing
exactly
at the same time.
Yes,
and that scene was kind of it was tough. It was a little I don't not awkward, but that is the first like confrontational thing outside of the school, because the parents like he says, hey, she needs to learn, she can help your business if she gets an education.
Right.
And then they go back and forth because they have the beer, and he's like, when he's done, he's like, okay, I'm gonna, Jaime Escalante gets up and he's like, I'm okay, and then the dad, the owner, rightfully, he's like, he looks at his wife, he's like, your husband comes into my business, insults me, and tells me how to this and this and
how to raise my kid,
how to raise my kid, and he goes to give him the money, and he's like, I don't want your money, I don't want your business, just get out. And it sucked because yes, Anna was clearly one of the brighter students in the class, but
right.
The situation out of the classroom, was
right.
the reality of life, and
right.
it was just and like I was saying, I mean that Hispanic pride that
right.
we have, the Latino in us, we're very prideful, and it can be the best thing and it can also be the worst thing,
right? And you see it, you literally see that juxtaposition in that scene of like in the dad and in the teacher, right?
Yeah.
It's like we both want what's best for your daughter, but we have to discuss what a balance could be, and at the end of the day, it's her choice, not either of ours, right? And I feel like
that's true. Yeah, he did tell him that.
I feel like this scene is very pivotal, I think, in a lot of ways, because like you were just saying, I think it speaks a lot to the complexities of our culture and what is important, and how and why it's important, because it's one of those things where it's like we are hardworking people, clearly, because he talks about, like, he's like, I came to this country washing dishes and now I own this business, and it's like that's true, right? Like I think it's true that Hispanic people can be hardworking people, but I think also, to Jaime Escalante's point, is like we've always only been known for doing hard manual labor, but that's not all we can do. And so we need to try to strive for better, because we as Hispanic people should not only be seen as like people that work in fields. And it gets referenced a lot in this movie where like when a lot of the students are reaching their boiling point, and they're like, hey, I'm done. I can't do this anymore because it's too hard. And they all of them talk about, like, I have no problem with being like a burger flipper because the world needs them. And and Jaime Escalante is like, yeah, we do, but it doesn't have to be you. Like, there could be other people that will do that. And it's just because you want to give up. And that's the only reason. He's like, you are better than that. And he makes them dig deep to find out what they what they are capable of doing.
Right.
And so I like we were saying, I feel like it's a very pivotal scene, because shortly thereafter you see them back in class yet again. And then like they're doing, I thought it was kind of a funny scene because they're doing a practical example on the board about how like Juan has
the algebra.
Yeah, it's like Juan has 2 girlfriends, but like Anna is also like whatever, has 3 boyfriends, and then so like he's like worded this whole thing into a
he's made an algebra equation out of, but he's using like pimps and
and juggalos
gigolo
so like and it's funny because he's getting audited that day by the teachers in the class, and then Anna shows up at the very end, and she gets the answer right. So the father
she's walking in the door. She gives the answer.
Yeah, she gives the answer that how many boyfriends or how many girlfriends the gigolo has. but yeah, so like you get a real sense of like, oh, okay, the father has let her come back to school, but and then from there, it seems like they go on a class field trip to, I guess, wherever his neighbor works at a computer, computer. I don't know what that place was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It looked like some kind of computer software or something. Because that's right. Because in the class, the students are like, "What are we learning this for?"
Yeah.
Like when are we ever going to use this?
Right. He's like, I got a calculator.
And then the next, and then the very next scene, he's got him going on a field trip into the computer and showing them how those applications, applied, where algebra is applied in some professions.
Yeah, and so they're walking around, and then that's when he's there with his neighbor, and they're looking at stuff, and then some of the students are like, "What is this? Like, what kind of math is this?" And he's like, "Oh, this is calculus, and you'll get you'll get this in college. You know, like this is
Yeah.
But then like the neighbor guy is like, oh, he's like, really? Because like my kids has this in high school. And so like Escalante
clearly in another school district,
right? Where there's like white kids and whatnot, because it's a different area altogether. And so Escalante kind of looks over and is like, no shit, like, you know, like, like, you know, you can almost see the Mexican pride kind of coming out of him of like, well, if they're teaching it there, then I can do it. And so like shortly thereafter, he tells the I guess
there's another meeting.
Yeah, there's
about the accreditation,
right? And he's
another issue.
And he's like, well, I want to teach like calculus over the summer.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he says if I can teach them calculus and if they can pass the AP calculus exam, will that help show that this school is you know.
Yeah, we're capable.
Like we can justify additional funding, and we can justify, you know,
right,
that they, you know, that we give a shit,
right,
basically.
Yeah. And it's funny because they have to do a thing over the summer, which actually would allow them to actually teach calculus. So you quickly, you know, you see the what he's asking of these students, which is like, hey, you're going to work over the summer. We're going to take this exam, and if we pass it, the next year, your senior year, I will teach you calculus, and that particular calculus gives them college credit. So
credits.
It gives them a head start into
and
college.
again, and he says that you can be the first person in your families with college credits, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's telling them this is what it could be,
right?
You know, but you're going to have to apply yourself. I mean, he goes as far as making them sign a contract that they're going to do this.
Yeah.
You remember that scene?
Yeah. And they're all like, what? And like, you're really going to make us do this? And he's like, you know, it's, like I forget exactly how he words it, but he talks about, he's like, it's a commitment, you know, like it's a commitment. And that's all this paper is just saying that you are going to commit to this. We are going to commit to this, and I'm going to be there with you. And like he keeps saying step by step, you know, the whole thing is just step by step. And so, they take their summer exam, they pass it. They are able to teach calculus, their senior year. And so he starts, you know, we get into the process of him actually teaching that, but, the other teachers are very much like sort of against it, because they're like saying, if like you think you can do this, but we know that most everybody here like barely is holding on to whatever little bit of like confidence that they barely have,
self-esteem,
just to graduate like at a basic level. If you try to teach these kids like calculus, you're going to break them, and then you're going to break them, and then they're going to lose whatever they did have, and they may not even graduate, like let alone pass your calculus. And so there's a big argument there again of like, well, then we need to make sure that the expectation for them is set at a bar that they cannot go under. And he's very demanding of that. And I love that because I think not only is this like a movie about a teacher or whatever, but I feel like from a communication standpoint, like I feel like anybody in the world of communication who has to work with other people, whether it be in a leadership role or whatever, like should watch this movie, because like he is a very good person at reading the room, understanding, like he has very high emotional intelligence, and also like he knows how to set like a boundary and stays within that, right? Which is like, hey, this is the expectation. I'm making it very clear what that is, and anything less than that is not good enough. So make sure that anything you do will put you at that point. So every time they want to give up, he's like, nope, like that's not gonna be acceptable, because I know what it takes. And every time you talk about wanting to take the easy way out, like when I think, who was the muscle guy's name again? Pancho.
That's what it's listed as. I don't remember, but he was the one with the car, with the Camaro he was constantly fixing.
Yeah, Pancho was the one that was like, hey, I'm not going to be able to take this class. Oh, that's right, because the class requires them to work on Saturdays.
Class on Saturdays.
They have to show up to school like an hour early, and they have to stay like 2 hours late, I think. Yeah. And Saturdays. And he's like, hey, I can't do this because like my uncle is going to offer me a job to work as a mechanic.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I'm going to take it because I'm going to work on Saturdays. And he's like, I need to start now because if I work there 2 years, then I'll be able to join the union and I'll have a great job. And he's like, yeah, but like you can also be smart and do that if you want, but you know, you can do that after, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he tries to talk him out of it. And it takes a minute for him to be like, no, this is like, you're not thinking about the future. And then there's a scene, I think, where he is driving in the Camaro with Jaime Escalante, and
that's right.
They almost kind of get into an accident because
he's like left or right, because he's coming up to a Y.
Yeah,
and he makes him make that choice like really quick, and he's like, go right, and so Jaime goes right, and then they hit a dead end, and he's like, that's the problem. You're not looking ahead.
You're not looking down.
You're not looking down the road. Right. And then he kind of like it takes that to make it finally clicks with him.
Right.
You know
that. Like you're thinking about having money in your pocket now.
Like the ride, because they're talking about the car and, you know, like while he's driving, and then he just kind of purposely puts himself where he's like, am I going left or right? And he like does, you know, he makes him make a quick choice in the moment, and then he makes him see what he's trying, the message, you know.
Yeah, and I think that like
it was a great scene.
Yeah, it resonates a lot, right? Because it means that yes, you're going to have to make sacrifices in your younger years, but it adds up to something in the long run, right? And it's always hard for young people to understand that, you know. And I think especially with as you and I, you know, are in our 50s or about to hit I'm about to hit the 50s.
Yeah,
but like it makes a lot more sense, right? It's like, oh man, there were times I could have gone to this party or this concert or whatever, but you know. And granted, we didn't apply it to calculus, but we put it into other places in our lives and in work, and it really, in the end, it starts to pay off. And I think that's what that's what the whole movie talks about, right? Because like shortly thereafter, I think like you basically see the rest of the movie, which is I feel like they continue teaching. I think at some point like Jaime Escalante kind of overstresses himself and has a minor heart. I think they say a minor heart attack, but I don't know how often heart attacks are minor. I mean, I know there's varying degrees of it, but in the 80s, it just kind of seemed like, I don't know, like that seemed pretty bad. And it was basically because he was overworking himself. You know, he was
because I mean he was teaching. Yeah, he was doing. He was teaching English.
Right.
At a night school to adults when that happened.
Right, that's right. But they also talked about how
he was stressing about the kids.
Right, and the wife was mad because she was saying at one point about how he's volunteering his time at middle schools for free, and he's teaching English and he's teaching calculus and he's just overdoing it, which eventually leads to his heart attack or minor heart attack, which for all you know, it could have been a stress test or a stress-induced, you know, sort of situation. But in any case, like, it leads up to the students, like, taking the calculus AP class, or the calculus AP test, which I guess you have to, like, opt for. And so they all take it. And then, because it's their senior year, and if I understand the timeline here, I assume that it's kind of near the end of the school year, or they've kind of reached their graduating point. And so they take the exam. They get the results back. Every single person passed. And everybody's freaking out because it's like, this is highly abnormal. Like, not only did they do it, but it's highly like irregular because all 18 students passed the exam. And so like the school's super proud. Everybody's like super proud.
They have the big ceremony. There's like the news is there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's like they're obviously proud of it. The school's proud of it. It puts the school in a positive light.
Yeah, it's a great
which is great story. Yeah, you know, everything is wonderful. They have them celebrating. The kids are at the beach.
Yep,
they're all celebrated. They're still like dressed, in their shit. And Angel strips down to his boxers. He's like, "This is stupid." Like he's a vato. He doesn't go in the water. He's like, "No, I don't do that." And they pressure him, and they're all, "Come on," they passed. Everybody's excited and happy, and and at that point, it looks like everything is great, happy ending.
Yeah,
is what it looks like.
Yeah,
but it's not the end of the movie.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny because I remember again in the theater, I was like, "Oh well, I guess the movie's over." But then you realize like, "Oh wait, what?" And then so shortly thereafter, which it appears either they have graduated or they're about to graduate, or there is a timeline where clearly they've kind of got senioritis because they're like, "Oh man, everything's great. We're all kind of going out. We're all doing our things." Yeah. And then they all start getting phone calls and letters in the mail about how their exams are being challenged by
like an audit or something.
Yeah, because
they're being investigated. Yeah.
Yeah, they're being investigated because they were saying the irregularity of the exams,
mistakes.
Yeah, and the mistakes that they all got the exact same mistakes wrong. That they found that irregular, and they said even though that, I guess the identity of the whoever was taking the exam is hidden, that I guess because, which is why I think they found it weird. They were like, "How do you know?" But then they were like, "Well, we ended up looking at who these people were and where they were from," which brought up the investigation. But it also seemed very odd that they were like specifically targeting a group of people that, much like the teacher that earlier in the movie who was like saying like, these kids have given up. So statistically this is wrong. Like, this is impossible. Like, there's no way that 18 individuals from a very
from East LA high school,
underprivileged school, maybe the worst high school, passed this exam. So we are not allowing the scores to, like, they basically,
they weren't publishing them or something,
right? They basically didn't uphold the grades, so they didn't earn their college credit, and they basically not only like didn't get their college credit, but like their reputation of just like, hey, you guys are cheaters.
Yeah,
and
everything's in question.
The school had already done this presentation. Everybody was so proud of them, but now everybody's quick to be like, oh well,
of course they cheated. It's Garfield High School.
Yeah, exactly. And even there's a sequence where Jaime Escalante is talking to the other the other woman, the other teacher, and he's like saying, do you think they cheated? And she's like, and it's interesting because I think you get a real snapshot of not only like the late 80s, but even like kind of how the world was kind of moving and how things are misrepresented in like media. But she was like, look, I go home and I watch the news every night, and there's always a story about some person who did a bad thing and their lawyer said they didn't do it, and we're all supposed to believe that they didn't do it, and almost always come to find out they did do it. And so he's like, so yeah, I think that when most people do something wrong, that they're probably guilty. And like she says it in such a way that like it's very defeatist, and it's very like, well, like if the news and other people say that they cheated, then they probably cheated. And so like she's almost defaulting to this organization, the what was it, the ETA, the Educational Testing Service, I think is what it was.
Yeah, ETS.
Yeah. So she's basically saying like, hey, they're like they're an accredited, people. They wear suits and ties.
They wear suits. Yeah.
they look important, have business cards. So like, why wouldn't we believe them? They're not lying. They're probably telling the truth. So yes, I believe that your students are probably guilty of cheating. And like, it says a lot about that movie, right? Because then it quickly turns into the, I think like a very strong point, and maybe why I wanted to talk about this movie in particular this week, because like with everything that's kind of going on in the news and everything that, talking about, how people feel about immigrants and people like that like I feel very personal. Like it's a personal hit for people like me, that I get angry, not only in what's happening in the world, but when you see a movie like this, and this is based on a true story, and this really did happen, that I take this personally too, right? I get a little angry to be like, why why do people think that because of my last name or, you know, how the color of my skin or whatever. And, you know, it kind of had me thinking of just, you know, I remember, you know, I remember, well, I know you know this, but like, I remember in high school when I was like, out trying to get to a friend's house, and I was in what was called Treasure Hills, or like the nice part of town.
Yeah.
And I was with another friend, and we got pulled over because we kind of got lost. And, you know, this is obviously way before Google
there was
Maps.
No MapQuest
yet. No MapQuest, no Google Maps, no nothing. We just handwritten down, like, go down this street, take a right, whatever, go left. It's, you know, the number, whatever. And we got lost, and we didn't know where we were going. Like, we eventually were kind of going in circles, and it was late at night, and we were, you know, we were going over to drink and, you know, do stuff we weren't supposed to be doing. But we got pulled over by a cop, and there was a person with him, I guess from like whatever their HOA neighborhood watch or whatever. And they pulled us out of the car, and they started like asking me all these questions, you know, like, what does that stand for on your hat? And I was like, Colorado Rockies. Like, what are you asking? You know? And like, I was kind of pulled aside from other people and questioned, you know, like, well, what are you doing out here? I was like, I have friends that live here. Like, what do you think I'm doing here? Like, you know, Is it because of the way I look? You know, is it because what we're driving looks like shit? You know, and he was like, you know, well, you know, you shouldn't be out late or whatever. It's like, is it illegal to be out late? I mean, is there a curfew? Like, I mean, I gave him a little bit of shit because I was like, why am I being questioned? You know, because my white friends over there that you've pulled over there, you kept them all of them together. Like, why am I the only one being pulled out? Like, you know, it's kind of shitty. And so like in this scene leading up to this whole back end of the sequence where, you can see that Jaime Escalante is more angry about the fact that people don't think that these kids could ever be smart enough to do this than he is about anything else, right? Because you're stripping away their, I think he even says it maybe, but you're stripping away their dignity more than you are the grade or the college credit, because they worked hard and earned this, and you're taking it away just because it's like, it's the imagery of like, no, that's not possible. Right. And so I think that leads up to a big sequence between, Edward James Olmos and Andy Garcia. And I forget the other guy's name.
I don't remember, but those are the two doctors that work for the ETS.
Right. And so they're both trying to justify their sides of the argument. And, you know, I think it's done in a very like agreeable way, which is like, they're trying to state their position and he's stating theirs. And I guess depending on how you see it, you know, or how you want to take in that info, you know, there's validation to both sides of it. But obviously being Hispanic, you know, I'm with Edward James Olmos. And I always remember, and this is why I want to say I remember seeing this in the theater, because it gets very heated in that conversation, you know, of saying like, you know, if this was Beverly Hills, this wouldn't even be like,
they wouldn't have questioned
this. They would not have questioned this. And so Andy Garcia's character is like, are you accusing me of racism?
Yeah.
Because like, like you can't.
It's a very tense moment.
Yeah. Because he's like saying, you know, you can't come in here and accuse me of being a racist about what's happening.
And he's Hispanic. He's Latino himself.
Yeah. And he's trying to use that as a backboard too, of saying like, I grew up down in this part as well too, you know, but that doesn't necessarily make it okay. You know what I mean? Like, you're right. That scene's very, very tense. And I just remember, cause I remember in the theater as they're leaving, he's like, the other doctor is like, well, if you really think what you're saying is true and you don't think that they cheated, then you should have them retake the exam. And he's like, to show that they didn't cheat. And he's like, no, if they retake the exam, then it looks like they cheated because they're admitting
that they
cheated. Yeah. And so that scene gets super tense, but it's funny because I remember the theater like applauding, like almost like cheering when he's like, you know, my kids could maybe teach you a thing or two, Johnny.
And he says something about he mentions something about something. Yeah, he says something. My kids can teach you a thing or two, And then he's walking when he's at the door.
Yeah.
When he's like, but if I catch you on the street, I'm gonna kick your ass.
Yeah. And I remember the theater like thunder applause of just like, yeah, like give it to the man, like because I mean, obviously from our perspective, we've seen that these kids have worked hard. We've seen that this organization is trying to just take it away from them. And so, yeah, I'd be really angry too if I had to like justify myself, in that position. So they retake the exam. They again all pass. They don't pass with the same grades that they had before.
Yeah.
Because they literally
had one day
to study
to like refresh.
And I'm almost,
and then go it again.
I'm almost sure that they had already graduated or something, because when they're in the classroom in that one last day, like one of them says like, I never thought we'd be back in this room again.
You're right.
And so I think the assumption was they were done. Like they had checked out.
Yeah.
So like, not only are you mentally asking these kids to take this exam again, but you're asking them to mentally like refocus and like, you got to be in the right mindset to like, to take a test
for calculus, for AP calculus.
Yeah. And so, basically the movie just kind of wraps up at that point of like, you learn that, they all passed, and then you get the sort of montage that not only that was the highest in any area in LA. But the next year he like doubled the number of students that passed.
It went from 18 to 31.
Yeah, and then it was
that passed the test.
Yeah, and then it was.
Yeah, I wrote those numbers down because I was gonna say like we've done multiple movies now since we started this podcast, and I was telling my wife that was the first movie of the movies that we've started rewatching. Mm-hmm. That ending, I got emotional.
Yeah, because I mean, you feel that swelling of pride because it's like, hell yeah, they did it, and like. I think, again, whether it's calculus or how it's applied effort, I think a Hispanic culture, because the main focus of the movie is on Hispanic kids. I mean, I think everybody in there was Hispanic, or maybe mix, or whatever. But I think the emphasis of being like, it's totally normal to be, especially if you're Hispanic, to get like a little bit of a lump in your throat because you're like, hell yeah. Like, there are times when we, whether it's an exam or like in our jobs now or something that we've done in our lives or whatever, that, part of it comes through perseverance and that comes through our parents. But I think that comes through our heritage and our importance of like who we are as a people. And so, I think in a lot of ways, like, I love this movie from the viewpoint of that, right? Especially in a tumultuous time that we're kind of in now. That we're all. I love when he says that. There's like the one last thing I remember about this movie is like when he's talking about it, you've got two things against you with your surname and the color of your skin. He's like, but math is the great equalizer because. Math is like universal, and it's like, doesn't matter, just as long as you know it, and that's what's important. Yeah. And you guys can apply yourself and you can show them that none of that other stuff matters. Right. And I think a lot of that comes from, our heritage and whatnot, as long as we can be given the opportunities, to have that and not, be displaced because, not to get super into all the other things, but it doesn't have anything to do with like your frat or your fraternity brothers or whatever who at these jobs that get you in. It's like, no, get the guy who can do the job, right? And sometimes that's people that are like hardworking people, like us, and we just if we given the opportunity to apply ourselves, like we can do it. And I think like these movies about leaders and teachers and stuff like that. I mean, it's very inspiring. So yeah, this was we say whether a movie's fun or this or that. I mean, I don't know. I find this movie fun. Like I find it enjoyable. It makes me feel, it makes me feel good. Like you were saying,
I was gonna say it's a feel good movie.
Gets you emotional at the end, for sure, because
Yeah.
you hope that there's like a better future, ahead of us, and at the end of the day, I think there always will be, right? As long as you have people like this that continue to like work hard, and want to do better, and be like a Jaime Escalante, right? Like you provide for others, and you put others, almost sometimes ahead of yourself. Even to your own detriment sometimes, which is not good. But that's part of what's built into us as Hispanics, right? So, I don't know. I don't know if we even have to ask the question if it's a top shelf movie. Like, it is for me. Like, absolutely. What do you? I mean,
yeah. I was a little on the fence just because I think because compared to the other movies, this is like the first real drama. There wasn't a lot of the action adventure.
Right.
Stuff that makes it wasn't a quirky. I mean, it was based on a true story, and but the fact that it drew out different emotions for me, was kind of like the what kind of tipped me over to the top shelf, because it's a special movie. I mean, I gotta say, I didn't know about your story, the whole pulled over in Treasure Hills. I know we were talking about because my friend, my good friend in high school, Eloy, lived in Treasure Hills, so. I was in that area a bit too, during my high school years, and obviously out there later than I should have been and what have you. But,
but we were kids. That's what
we were kids. Yeah, there was no stay home and play on Steam or none of that shit. I couldn't stay home. I couldn't stay home and just watch YouTube videos all damn day. That was not a thing.
We had like 1 or 2 games for our gaming systems, and it was like, all right, well, I've already beaten that, so like, what else am I gonna do?
Yeah, and he and I, we worked in movie theaters together, so it was. We all had our friends. You were 3 years behind me, but we still did all the same shit.
Right.
And I guess I was fortunate to have not in my entire lifetime. I've not had any incidents where I was singled out because of my color.
Yeah.
And then the fact maybe, and also you throw into the fact that I went in basically into the biggest melting pot you could possibly think of in the United States. I joined the military, right? So I had, every color in my Bradleys and my, every crew I was with, it was forced integration, but, and it was good. I mean, I've got friends of every color and so I guess, like I said, I was fortunate enough that I never had to deal with any type of incidents growing up, and then in my adult life I'm at 51 now, and I can, I guess, luckily say I've never had anything happen, but yeah, we weren't in the worst part of our hometown. We were in a really good spot, but because of where our parents worked, we used to, you remember Bonita Park? It was on the way to Ben Milam. And that was the barrio, if you wanted to call it. Right. It was the place where the sides of the buildings were all tagged and graffitied, and it looked a little trashy. I had a couple friends that lived in that area, and so I mean, I wasn't unfamiliar to that. But our parents, because of their hard work, again, the hardworking Latinos, right? Mm-hmm. They worked their asses off to be a dialysis nurse and a maintenance department management, at a state hospital. They were able to kind of get us out of what could have been our surrounding, and they moved us out of that area to live in a they wanted better for us, with the dream of us doing better for ours, and getting ourselves out of the rough and tough, that's in South Texas, and so yeah, this definitely kind of hits, and then when it culminates at the end with it has that little montage as he's walking out in his silhouette, and it has the words on the bottom where it says in 1982 all 18 passed, and then it goes to 1983 the 31 passed, and it was like, I don't know those people, I don't know the kids, at all. They were in California, but I felt so proud, to just see those numbers at the bottom, and it was like they did that shit. It can be done.
It can be done.
When he's talking to the other teachers and administrators, he says you have to, you need ganas, and they were like, ganas? What's ganas? ganas, like the desire. You have to, that's when he was telling them that we have to push them.
Right.
Don't just let them accept what they're told they're supposed to be.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's kind of, without really knowing, because we were little back then, but I mean, our parents did the same to us. They pushed us. They did everything they could to get you into art school. Our brother went to his schools and got his music degrees, and now he's a fine arts director. I did my time in the Army. I took the hard right. But I got no regrets.
Yeah, I mean,
but that mindset got me promoted to become a sergeant and have a crew and then have a squad, and I ran a platoon for a while. I was in high leadership positions. I was briefing lieutenant colonels on what my crews were going to do to support their units.
Right.
So I was in big meetings with high ranking people and giving briefings for operations.
Right.
And so I didn't just accept the minimum and just skate along. None of us, because our parents as Hispanics pushed us to be hardworking SOBs.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah, because it's in our heritage, it's in our background, and a lot of that is brought up in the movie, right? And talking about it's like it's your forefathers before you, of this and that. They're the ones that helped create math and shape it the way that it is, and so he's trying to explain how smarts and hard workers come from is in your bloodline, so it's there. Yeah. It's just whether you want to apply it or not, right? Yeah. And that's kind of what it boils down to. But you need that person who will act as the igniter, right? The fuel to or really the match, to light them. And whether they want to be, it's like they say about leadership, right? It's not about being the fire behind you to push you. It should be the fire that ignites you from the inside that fuels you to move forward, right? Not only oh my God, there's fire behind me, I better run. That is one way of doing it, but that's not always the most
That's a different leadership style, yeah.
Right, exactly. Because your fire will spread if you can do it from the inside and let the person take it from there, right? And obviously this movie, is very much about that. But yeah, so absolutely top shelf video. I think, this one should be on Blu-ray and probably Blu-ray and DVDs probably more than fine for this movie because, VHS is neat and all, but this movie is not really a movie that doesn't have action sequences and all this and that, like we've said.
Yeah, no.
You're not getting much out of a VHS rental, so a Blu-ray and a DVD is going to be just fine. But in terms of, and I was thinking about this a little bit because I have two things that I think we can have from this movie in terms of merch.
Okay.
One of them I think it's pretty straightforward, and I always think about this whenever I see this movie because they're dealing with equations and drawing all that out. So I think we need tablets of graph paper, that are but they got to have either Angel with his crossed arms or some of the characters, on there. Okay. But it's it's a top shelf video, in the corner. And then when you open it up, it's graph paper, and you can use it for math, but it always makes me think of D&D. Whenever we had graph paper, we draw out our little our top down, D&D dungeons or whatever at the library because they'd always kick us outside of the library because they're you can't be talking in the library, and it's well, yeah, but we're playing D&D,
Yeah.
So fine, we'll go sit outside. But so that's one of them. I think we got to have graph paper. And then the other thing, I may have mentioned this to you before, but so my friend Joel, he used to do a webcomic that I was one of the characters in, and my other buddy Josh. So it was the three of us, and it was. He would write about our lunch, whenever we'd meet up for lunch, we were younger and we'd always have these kind of crazy stories that we'd tell each other, whether we were, they were real stories or we're just making up stuff or, we're just kind of laughing at, stuff we're seeing on the internet. But at the time, that's when Battlestar Galactica was really big. The one that has Edward James Olmos. And we were, you know, when we get together at lunch, you know, we're like, oh, what do you think is going to happen? You know, oh, did you see that one episode? You know, we're just kind of going on and on and on. And as the popularity of that show grew and it just got bigger, like my buddy Joel started doing T-shirts that would sort of cross promote like certain things like that he would just find funny, right? And I think around that time, so this would have been like 2004, 2005, somewhere in that area. I think when the Twilight movies came out, the vampire Twilight movies, you know, the whole saga and all the whole series, whatever. So I guess one of the characters' names, I've never seen those movies, but one of the characters' names I think is Edward. I think that's maybe the main guy or something.
Is one of the vampires. I wasn't into that,
vampires,
but I know that. Yeah, it was about vampires.
Okay. I don't know why I thought it was werewolves, but
I think that happened later.
Oh, okay.
But I wasn't watching.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it, but I think there was another one of the sequels or something. I think there was another guy that was a vampire or a werewolf. But anyway. It's not important.
Yeah. So, well, for this story, so like, so I guess that guy's character's name was Edward, and my buddy, and so at the time I remember, you know, that Twilight font is it's very particular. I think if you see it, you'll like, oh, that's Twilight, right? And so he made these T-shirts which had a big image of Admiral Adama from Battlestar Galactica in his like admiral outfit, you know, like kind of like a bust, you know, like from the chest up, and he's at like you know, he's like in his like looking off to the side, kind of like a military picture, and or I guess like, or the kind that you would see like in a military office, right? And so like he had a shirt that had Edward James Olmos as Admiral Adama, but underneath it said Edward, but it was written in the font style of Twilight. So it was one of his more popular shirts, and I would say I'll send you an image of it, or maybe we'll post it with the show posting for this one. But so that was probably one of his more popular shirts, and it was just funny because, you know, obviously it was a good crossover. So I think we should have some of those shirts in the merch. But I think the other thing that was kind of funny about that, or kind of interesting about that, was so he did those T-shirts, and then he got a cease and desist letter from Edward James Olmos to say like, hey, you can't use that image. You can't use that image of me, even though I get it's a cross thing between, you know, whatever. But so he told my buddy like, hey, you're gonna have to take that down. But my buddy reached out to him and was saying like, hey, you know, I wasn't trying to, you know, this or that or whatever. And so they came to this agreement. He's like, you know what? It's fine. You can keep selling those shirts, but I want like 50% of the profits to go to the Jaime Escalante like endowment fund or some sort of like whatever. And he's like, okay. Yeah. He's like, you know, actually I'm totally down for that. And so like they ended up promoting it on Edward James Olmos's like home webpage or whatever of like
whatever his website is.
Of like, hey, we have these T-shirts and half the proceeds go to whatever, and I guess you young kids like them. So I'll find that image and I'll send it to you, or like I said, we'll post it with the show notes or the Instagram post on this. But I think we should have that shirt because I mean it is him, but maybe we should get like an updated version with like the Jaime Escalante, because he's kind of got that bald look, you know. And I don't know if you ever seen what the real Jaime Escalante looks like.
I actually looked up pictures before we got going. I was like, dude, the comb over that he did for the makeup that they did on Edward James Olmos is spot on.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Like they definitely got that look down, you know. So graph paper and the Edward James Olmos T-shirts, I think we'll have to rebrand with. Like I said, we can still maybe do the Twilight thing, but we'll put the Top Shelf Video logo or something on there as well too. But those are my two things. I don't know if you had it. And the only other thing I could think of that for whatever reason popped up in my head when I saw this was, do you ever remember? I mean, he has it in this movie, but nowadays I guess most schools use whiteboards, but like chalkboards kind of went away. maybe right around the time I was graduating, like around 94, 95, like we were moving away from chalkboards and we were moving into like whiteboards.
The dry erase board. Yeah.
But I do remember.
Man, I forgot about that.
I remember the chalk like holder, and I always thought it was so cool. Like it was like a metal, like it looked like a metal, like it almost looked like a metal sort of device, and you'd put the chalk in it, and you kind of click the back. And it would,
it was almost kind of like a mechanical pencil for chalk.
And I always thought it was super cool. So whenever you got to go up to the board to do a math problem, I'm like, oh man, I hope I get.
Yeah, you were given the
mechanical pencil thing, and he has one because he keeps it in his top pocket. And I always thought that was like super cool because I always hated the way chalk felt like on your hands, you know.
Right.
But having the mechanical pencil thing was always kind of cool. But
right,
I don't know if we want chalk. I don't know if there's any purpose for chalk nowadays. I mean, I can't say I've even seen it in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they still sell it like sidewalk chalk, you know, for kids to like draw there on on the driveway or whatever.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, I don't know.
I couldn't think of anything, to be honest. So like, I mean, I remember you mentioned you told me the shirt story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So so I mean, I guess I have nothing to suggest, but I definitely concur with. Yeah. Like the shirt idea.
Yeah.
The graph paper is a good one. I wouldn't.
The only one other thing I'll say, and then maybe that'll be enough for this movie, would be because I remember it was such a big thing in the 80s that Dad had a bunch of them, but the pocket protector, like he would get them from like the electrical stores,
the electrical companies,
like some of the lumber places, like. I always like, I mean, again, I feel like it was a very nerdy thing, but I can tell you nowadays, I wish I had a pocket protector because I can't tell you how many, I mean, I carry a pin with me almost all the time, and I've already ruined like 2 or 3 pairs of pants because like I look down and like the ink has like blotted out on my pants. I'm like, God damn it. Like, or on a shirt, you know? And then granted, I don't have too many shirts with pockets, but like my wallet, you know, is more like a sketch wallet, you know, it's kind of more like a little book.
Oh, right.
And so I keep, you know, like I keep a little, a small pin in there or whatever. You know, I just like analog stuff, right? I like to be able to grab something and like, I like to take notes by hand instead of typing it on my phone or whatever. But, I think a pocket protector would actually be kind of cool because he has a pocket protector. He has it in the image on the main, you know, thing or whatever. Because he's got all his like pins and stuff in there. So like, I don't know, maybe we can bring back the pocket protector, like, and see if anybody like, I mean, if anybody, I'll take one because I'll put it in my back pocket to put my pins in, so I don't bust my pins or figure something out. But, you know, this movie doesn't have as many like promotional items, and these may end up being more of a collector item. But you know, whatever. I feel like
I mean, I remember seeing the poster. The poster has a.
Angel, yeah.
It's got Angel. It's got Lou Diamond Phillips kind of in the those one piece desk. Yeah. That, I mean, like I'm looking at it now, and he's kind of got his legs out, and he's just kind of, you know, leaned back, and you know, it looks kind of has like that defiant student look, I guess. Yeah. But he ends up being one of the kids that gets a 5.
Yeah, he's like one of the smartest kids of the group.
Yeah, he's one of the smart. Yeah, he ends up being one of the higher graded. Scores. I guess. I mean, I would be open to the poster.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's maybe a little misleading, but I like that. I think it's cool. I mean, and not gonna lie, you know, I think the Cholo look is a cool look. I mean, I always liked the Chucks, you know, and the kind of the khakis with the
khakis and the Chucks, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a good look.
White shirt.
It's probably a better look than most of the looks we had with like jorts and, you know, like our ankle or knee high socks, and I mean, we were a mess. You know, I'd say Cholo's probably dressed. You know, it was partly our choice too. You know, it's not like exactly everything that Mom and Dad were making us wear. We had to pick out some of our clothes, and I think we made some pretty poor decisions on our clothes back then. So like, I think Angel looks pretty badass, to be honest. So you know, I agree with you. I think that having that poster could be pretty cool. You know, he's kind of an iconic character of the Hispanic community, even though like he's Filipino. He's not. I think all those years I was just like, oh man, like he's a Mexican and he's one of us. And then like Denise, my wife, she's like, no, she's like, he's on our team. He's a Filipino. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't know that. I was like, he plays like a Mexican Indian in Young Guns. Like he's Richie Valens. He's
Richie Valens.
He's ours. And she's like, no, he's Filipino. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that. I didn't know that until like much older, because like I don't believe that's like I think Lou Diamond Phillips is his like sort of Hollywood name. I don't know if that's his real actual name. Yeah. It may have been changed or whatever for Hollywood or whatnot. But
it was his stepfather's name apparently.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is.
Yeah. And he was where did I just see it? He was born on the naval base in the Philippines.
That makes sense. Wait, is it Clark? Clark base?
It just says U.S. Naval Base, Subic Bay.
Oh, okay.
It may be. I don't know.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I was only gonna say because I think Denise is familiar. She lived near a military base, I think, when she was living in the Philippines. But
that's right. Yeah. She mentioned that in one of the podcasts.
Yeah,
the Tank podcast, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps up this episode. I think this is a really good movie. It's well filmed. It was good acting. Everything.
It was a good drama.
Yeah, very good drama.
With an awesome message. I mean, it's definitely.
I think it's one of those movies that holds up. It holds up today. Like you were saying, kind of gave you a little bit of the emotion there at the end, and I watched it thinking like, yeah, everything that is said in this movie still applies. Like, I think it's. I think it's good, and like you said, good message, good feeling movie. It's a lot of positivity. It's a lot of what we need. In the world. I guess we will. Go ahead and get that on the books to get ordered. And we'll probably have to close it out for this week. And I guess just to kind of remind folks, like if you want to give us feedback, you can email us at topshelfvideopodcast@gmail.com.
Yep.
We're on
movie recommendations.
Yeah,
for sure.
Give us movie recommendations. Let us know if you have stories, about some of the movies that we've talked about, maybe something that relates. Or the first time, if you remember watching some of these movies, I don't know, maybe you were in class and the teacher wanted to take some time off and was like, hey, we're going to watch this movie about math, so I can grade papers while you guys are watching a movie or something. But you can find us on Instagram, and we are also on Blue Sky, and then our website. You can also email and find info and all the episodes there as well. Which is topshelfvideo.com. But yeah, man, let's, like I said, I wanted to add a couple of, non-action ninja movies to the list. I feel like this one hits the mark, but, let's also get back to some of the things that we, also helped us, form our childhood. So, we will get back to those, here in the next couple episodes, but, let's go ahead and if you want to lock up front, I'll go ahead and lock up back, and we will call it a night for tonight. But thanks for swinging by, and
another good one.
Yes, definitely a good one. So we will catch you guys at the next work shift.
All right, good night.